It began without warning. At precisely 3:17 a.m. Universal Time Coordinated, every major satellite network went offline. Military radars across the globe flickered with static before going completely dark. Then, the power grids in multiple cities flickered and died. Darkness spread like ink over the earth. And then the sky burned. Streaks of emerald fire cut through the heavens, leaving shimmering contrails of energy as thousands of Zelthari warships descended. Their hulls, blacker than the void of space, reflected no light, making them appear like massive voids swallowing the stars. The first explosions rocked the planet within minutes. Beijing, Washington, Paris, Rio de Janeiro, each city erupted in flames as the Zelthari targeted military infrastructure. Missile silos detonated before launch. Airfields became molten craters. Naval fleets, once formidable forces, vanished beneath tidal waves of plasma fire. The world's militaries scrambled, but their responses were sluggish, uncoordinated. Generals and commanders still clung to the belief that this was a false alarm, an equipment malfunction, anything but what it really was, the end of the world as they knew it. By the time they realized the truth, it was too late. A war with no war. Humanity never stood a chance. The Zelthari were conquerors, their technology centuries beyond Earth's most advanced weapons. Towering insectoid warriors, standing 8 feet tall, marched through city streets like living tanks, their exoskeletons fused with biometal armor that adapted to damage. Their plasma rifles didn't just kill, they disintegrated. Their energy shields rendered conventional explosives useless. They didn't fight wars. They ended them. Within 48 hours, over half of Earth's organized military forces were neutralized. Fighter jets fell from the sky as energy pulses disrupted their electronics. Tanks melted under direct plasma strikes. Even nuclear weapons, humanity's last resort, proved worthless. Their launch sites were destroyed before they could be deployed. On the third day, the governments of Earth surrendered. Not because they wanted to. Because they had no other choice. The Zelthari broadcasted their message in every language, their deep, guttural voices rumbling through hacked television signals and radio waves. Your planet is now under the rule of the Zelthari Empire. Your resistance is futile. Submit, and you will be spared. Fight, and you will perish. There was no formal treaty. No negotiations. Only submission or annihilation. The arrogance of conquerors. In the aftermath of the invasion, the Zelthari divided the planet into controlled territories. They corralled humans into containment zones, cities turned prisons where they were forced into servitude. Anyone who resisted was executed on sight. Despite their brutal efficiency, the Zelthari made one crucial mistake: they underestimated humanity's ability to adapt. They saw humans as nothing more than primitive creatures wielding outdated weaponry. They had fought and defeated civilizations with energy weapons, starships, and advanced AI. Ballistic weapons, guns, rifles, and bullets were relics of a bygone era. The Zelthari no longer used projectiles. Their energy shields rendered plasma and ion-based attacks ineffective. So, they didn't bother developing defenses against something they considered obsolete. And that arrogance would cost them dearly. General Vekrath, one of the supreme tacticians of the Zelthari invasion, had been particularly vocal in his contempt for human weapons. Standing at the heart of a newly constructed base in the Rocky Mountains, he had laughed as he spoke to his subordinates. These creatures fight with fire-propelled slugs of metal. He scoffed, flexing his armored mandibles. They are still trapped in the past, while we are the future. Their weapons cannot harm us. They may as well throw stones. His warriors had clicked their mandibles in agreement. That confidence, that arrogance, was their first mistake. Their second mistake was not knowing that something was already watching them from the mountains. The first kill. It was a cold night in the Rockies, deep in the newly established Zelthari control zone. The base, a towering monolith of alien metal and pulsating energy, stood in a clearing, its sleek, curved walls glowing faintly in the dark. Patrols of Zelthari warriors marched along the perimeter, their plasma rifles humming with deadly energy. General Vekrath emerged from the base, his chitinous armor gleaming under the artificial lights. His mandibles twitched in mild irritation. Earth's atmosphere was uncomfortable, dry and thin compared to his homeworld. Still, he reveled in his victory. This planet was his. He turned his gaze toward the horizon, admiring the snow-capped mountains in the distance. And then it happened. A distant crack shattered the silence. The Zelthari, for all their technological prowess, had never heard a sniper rifle before. The bullet traveled nearly 2 miles through the frigid night air. It didn't emit energy. It didn't create a visible tracer. It was a whisper of death, moving faster than sound. By the time the shot reached its target, it was already too late. The .50 caliber round struck Vecrath just below his skull crest, piercing straight through his biometal armor as if it were paper. The impact snapped his head back violently, a blue-black spray of ichor exploding from the exit wound. His massive form collapsed to the ground, twitching once before going completely still. Dead. For the first time since the invasion began, the Zelthari panicked. The guards snapped their weapons in every direction, searching for the attacker. But there was nothing, no muzzle flash, no energy signature. Their scanners detected no life signs in the direction of the shot. Who, or what, had done this? Minutes passed, but no second attack came. Only the howling wind echoed through the mountains. Then the whispers began. The human survivors, huddled in containment camps, heard the news first. Somehow, someway, a single sniper had killed a Zelthari general. The name spread like wildfire through the resistance. The ghost of Olympus Ridge. A phantom, a shadow, a demon that struck from miles away, unseen and unstoppable. One shot, one kill. The Zelthari tried to dismiss it. They called it a lucky strike, an anomaly. But then, another commander fell. Then another. Each time, a single shot. No warning. No trace. No mercy. The Zelthari, who had thought themselves invincible, began to feel something they had never known before. Fear. Zelthari warriors were bred for conquest. From the moment they hatched, they were trained in war, how to fire plasma rifles with lethal accuracy, how to rip through armored foes with their scythe-like appendages, how to resist interrogation and fight to the death. They had seen entire species wiped out before. And yet, for the first time in their history, they were afraid. The first kill had sent shockwaves through their ranks. General Vecrath, one of the highest-ranking officers of the invasion, had been reduced to a lifeless husk in an instant. The shot had come from miles away, beyond the reach of their scanners, their weapons, their retaliation. At first, the Zelthari tried to rationalize it. A fluke. A desperate human who had gotten lucky. Then, 6 nights later, it happened again. Commander Ziktal, stationed at an outpost near the Appalachian foothills, had just stepped onto the platform of his command center when his head exploded in a spray of dark ichor. The guards at his side had only a fraction of a second to react before the sonic boom of the bullet reached their ears. By the time they scrambled into defensive positions, there was no trace of the shooter. No energy discharge, no movement in the surrounding hills. Only silence. An unseen hunter. The Zelthari had never faced an enemy like this. Their war doctrine was built around overwhelming force, crushing resistance with superior numbers, technology, and firepower. They fought wars of conquest, not wars of attrition. But this was not a war. This was a hunt. The sniper, whoever they were, never fired twice. A single shot. A single kill. And then, nothing. Zelthari patrols scoured the mountains, deploying drone swarms, heat-seeking bioscanners, and motion-sensitive radars. They turned over every rock, every ruined structure, every abandoned bunker. They found nothing. It was as if their enemy wasn't even human. They called it the ghost of Olympus Ridge. A phantom lurking in the darkness, waiting for them to make a mistake. And one by one, they did. Over the course of a month, 11 high-ranking Zelthari commanders fell to the sniper's rifle. Each kill was more precise than the last. Each shot delivered from an impossible distance. And with every fallen commander, the resistance grew bolder. The resistance awakens. The Zelthari had believed Earth's surrender was absolute. That humans had accepted their new masters. They were wrong. The sniper's attacks became a rallying cry. For the first time since the invasion, the underground resistance had hope. They were still outgunned, still outmatched, but now, they had a symbol, a myth whispered among the prisoners and rebels alike. The ghost is out there. The Zelthari can bleed. And if they can bleed, they can die. Across the world, resistance cells sprang back to life. Sabotage missions increased. Supply convoys disappeared. Even some of the human collaborators, those who had sided with the Zelthari to save themselves, began to rethink their alliances. The Zelthari tried to crush the growing defiance. They executed captured rebels publicly. They burned entire settlements in retaliation. They tightened security across every command post, every city, every outpost. But none of it mattered. Because they still couldn't stop the sniper. The failed ambush. Desperate, the Zelthari developed a new strategy: lure the sniper into a trap. General Thalzir, the new supreme commander overseeing North America, devised a plan. He would travel to a newly established command center in Arizona, without shielding, deliberately making himself appear vulnerable. The sniper, he reasoned, would not be able to resist such a tempting target. But it was all a ruse. Hidden within the valley were hundreds of Zelthari troops, cloaked in adaptive camouflage. Strike ships hovered just above the clouds, waiting for the sniper to reveal their position. Dozens of aerial drones scoured the landscape with infrared scans. This time, when the sniper fired, they would see it. They would kill the ghost once and for all. The Zelthari waited. And then, a single shot rang out. Thalzir staggered, his chest plate dented but intact. The kinetic plating had absorbed the impact. The Zelthari roared in triumph. Their scanners pinpointed the shot's origin instantly, a ridge nearly 3 miles away. Strike ships and ground forces swarmed the location, moving with ruthless precision. Soldiers surrounded the area, locking down every possible escape route. They expected to find a human sniper, desperate and outnumbered. Instead, they found a decoy. A remote-controlled rifle, mounted on a crude pivot system, programmed to fire without a human operator. The real sniper had never been there. And then, a second shot. This time, it didn't hit Thalzir directly. It struck the power cell on his kinetic armor. The protective shielding collapsed instantly. Before the Zelthari could react, the third shot came. And this time, there was no armor to stop it. The Supreme Commander was dead before his body hit the ground. The Zelthari, still processing what had happened, descended into chaos. How? How could a human, with such primitive weapons, outsmart them? How could a lone sniper bring an empire to its knees? And the most terrifying question of all. Who was the ghost of Olympus Ridge? And where would they strike next? The death of Supreme Commander Thalzir sent ripples of panic through the Zelthari ranks. He had been one of their finest strategists, a veteran of over 100 planetary conquests. And yet, he had died just like the others, his lifeless body crumpled in the dirt, taken down by a single, ancient human weapon. The Zelthari were no longer laughing at Earth's primitive technology. For the first time, their invincible occupation force was fracturing. Their command structure collapsed into paranoia. Each surviving officer feared they might be next. Promotions were refused. No one wanted to be in charge of Earth anymore, it was becoming a death sentence. And their warriors, their proud, genetically engineered soldiers, were breaking. There were whispers of deserters, Zelthari abandoning their posts, retreating into the shadows, afraid of an enemy they couldn't see. Some patrols refused to leave their bases at night. The Zelthari, the mighty conquerors, the architects of planetary subjugation, were being hunted. The search for the ghost. But the Zelthari were not an empire that admitted defeat easily. Enraged by the failures of his predecessors, Overlord Vruzal, one of the highest-ranking Zelthari warlords, descended upon Earth personally. He had once crushed entire civilizations beneath his claws, and he refused to let a single human undo what the Empire had built. His first act was simple. Find the sniper. Find the ghost. And kill them. Unlike his fallen commanders, Vruzal did not underestimate humanity anymore. He deployed thousands of hunter-killer drones. Entire forests were burned, mountains flattened, cities reduced to rubble, all in search of a single person. For weeks, the resistance watched in horror as the Zelthari's retaliation scorched the earth. And yet, through all of it, the ghost remained silent. No shots. No attacks. Nothing. It was as if the sniper had simply vanished. The ghost unmasked. Then, on a frigid night in the ruins of Denver, the impossible happened. The ghost revealed themselves. It started with a transmission, hijacking every remaining human communication frequency, every Zelthari channel. The static cleared, and a voice, calm, cold, and unshaken, spoke. To the Zelthari commander still breathing, your empire is bleeding. You just don't know it yet. The feed cut to a single figure, standing on the edge of a ruined skyscraper. They were clad in scavenged armor, pieces of different military units stitched together with straps and cloth. A ghillie hood covered most of their face, but their eyes, piercing, unforgiving, stared directly into the camera. You burned our cities. You slaughtered our people. You thought we were weak. A pause. You were wrong. Then, before the Zelthari could trace the transmission, the sniper vanished from the feed. The last stand at Olympus Ridge. Vruzal did not hesitate. He knew it was a trap. He knew the sniper was baiting him. But he didn't care. He would end this legend now. With every warship, every soldier, every drone at his disposal, he launched a final assault on Olympus Ridge, where the resistance had supposedly made its last stand. The night sky burned as Zelthri warships descended. The mountains shook as plasma bombardments turned entire cliffsides to rubble. And still, no sniper fire. The Zelthri warriors stormed the ridge, expecting a fight. They found nothing. And then they heard it. A faint, rhythmic beeping. They had walked straight into a trap. The ridge erupted. Hundreds of IEDs, mines, and remote detonated explosives hidden beneath the snow and rubble detonated at once. Zelthri warships in the sky were hit by EMP pulses, sending them crashing into the mountains. Ground forces were torn apart in the chaos. And then, the ghost struck. From the true position, hidden miles away, the sniper opened fire. One by one, Vruzal's officers fell. His elite guards collapsed, their skulls bursting open from unseen shots. The warlord barely had time to react before he felt it. A piercing, agonizing pain. He staggered. Looked down. A bullet had torn through his lower torso, a wound that wouldn't kill him instantly, but one that meant he had already lost. For the first time in his life, Overlord Vruzal felt something he had never known before. Terror. The ghost was real. And they had won. The wind howled across the shattered battlefield of Olympus Ridge, carrying the scent of burned metal and charred alien flesh. The once proud forces of the Zelthri Empire lay in ruins. Overlord Vruzal's hulking form was sprawled against a jagged slab of wreckage, his black ichor pooling beneath him, steaming in the frigid mountain air. His secondary heart was failing, he could feel it stuttering, struggling, dying. His claws twitched, trying to grip the hilt of his plasma blade, but the pain was unbearable. The ghost had done this. A single human. One warrior. Vruzal coughed, dark blood spilling from his mandibles. The once mighty warlord of the Zelthri invasion force had been reduced to this, a broken body, a defeated empire, an undeniable truth. They had underestimated Earth. They had mocked their outdated weapons, laughed at their ballistic technology, sneered at their stubbornness. And now, the Zelthri were the ones bleeding out in the dirt. Crunch. A deliberate, slow footstep. His mandibles tensed as he turned his failing vision to the source of the sound. A shadow emerged from the smog and fire. A lone figure, moving with the patience of someone who had already won. At first, Vruzal thought he was hallucinating. The figure seemed almost too small, too fragile to have single-handedly unraveled an empire. But as the human approached, as their face became clear in the dim light of the burning wreckage, he understood. The ghost of Olympus Ridge had finally stepped into the open. She was young, far younger than the hardened warriors he had expected. Late 20s, perhaps. Her face was a map of scars, stories of battles fought in the shadows. The remnants of a ghillie hood clung to her armor, which was cobbled together from scavenged human military gear and pieces of salvaged Zelthri plating. Her sniper rifle, the weapon that had rewritten the rules of war, was held with effortless confidence. Vruzal wheezed out a broken laugh, his mandibles quivering. A single human did all of this. His voice was weak, but still laced with the remnants of his pride. What are you? The sniper didn't answer at first. She just stood there, watching him die. Then, in a voice like ice, she said, "I'm the reminder that you should never have come here." Vruzal grunted, his massive frame shifting slightly. His right claw twitched toward his plasma blade. The sniper lifted her rifle. "Don't." Vruzal froze. The word was calm, spoken without emotion. It was not a threat. It was a promise. He had spent his entire life breaking worlds, watching kings and rulers beg for mercy. He had crushed civilizations under the weight of the Zelthri war machine. He had never felt fear. Until now. For the first time, he understood what it was to be truly powerless. "You could have hidden," he rasped. "You could have let your species die. But you fought." A ghost of a smile flickered across her lips. "I didn't fight for the species." She adjusted her grip on the rifle. "I fought for the ones you took from me." Vruzal bared his mandibles in a weak snarl, but there was no strength left in him. The sniper exhaled. Then she pulled the trigger. A single shot rang out through the mountains. Vruzal's head snapped back, a fist-sized hole punched through his skull. His massive body sagged, twitched once, and then went still. The last overlord of the Zelthri was dead. The collapse of an empire. The fall of Olympus Ridge sent shockwaves through the Zelthri ranks. With their overlord dead, their leadership in ruins, and their strongest warriors slaughtered, the once mighty occupation force began to unravel. At first, they tried to regroup. Some commanders attempted to rally their remaining forces, but they soon realized a horrifying truth. The ghost was not done. 4 days after Vruzal's death, the the Zelthari continued to fall. One by one, officers disappeared. Some were found with clean bullet wounds to the head. Others were simply never found at all. Paranoia spread like wildfire. Without leadership, the surviving Zelthari panicked. Some tried to fight back, but their supply lines were severed. Their warships, once invincible, were now easy prey for human guerrilla forces. Without reinforcements from the Zelthari homeworld, their numbers dwindled. Others fled. They abandoned their posts, hijacked whatever ships they could, and vanished into deep space, carrying tales of the ghost, the unseen warrior who had hunted them down with an ancient human weapon. The once unbreakable grip of the Zelthari Empire had been shattered. Humanity had done the impossible. They had survived. They had fought back. And in the end, they had won. The vanishing of the ghost. When the smoke cleared, when the last Zelthari warships fled Earth's orbit, humanity searched for their savior. But the ghost of Olympus Ridge was gone. No one knew her real name. No one knew where she had come from, or where she had disappeared to. Some claimed she had died in the final battle. Others believed she had simply walked away, vanishing into the ruins, leaving nothing behind but a legend. Her sniper rifle was never found. Her last known coordinates were erased. It was as if she had never existed at all. But the story remained. 4 years after, as humanity rebuilt its cities, as survivors told stories of the war, they spoke in hushed voices of the sniper who had brought an empire to its knees. The Zelthari survivors, scattered across the galaxy, still whispered her name in terror. To them, she was no mere human. She was a nightmare, a myth, a ghost that would never die. Because somewhere, in the dark corners of the universe, in the silent depths of space, they knew she was still out there. Watching. Waiting. Hunting. And if the Zelthari ever dared return to Earth, they would learn the truth. The ghost never misses.